Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the new subscribers. Firstly, I'd like to say a huge congratulations to Gayle Agostinelli for reaching 20,000 plus subscribers, and to give a warm and heartfelt thank you for recommending my new YouTube channel to her subscribers on her giveaway video. I am truly overwhelmed and humbled by your support and your generosity, so thank you so much, Gayle. I truly appreciate it. I would also like to thank all of the new subscribers who have hit the button on my page and watch the videos, or hit the subscribe button so that they can revisit, and for all the positive comments about the journals that I've posted. It's, as I said, quite overwhelming to have you all come and visit when I've only put 2 videos up, and I have felt the need to do a follow-up video and show my gratitude and to keep this going. I have jumped in at the deep end. I really don't know what I'm doing, but here we go. So I'd like to thank Paula, who asked a question about my tea staining on one of the videos, and I thought I would do a quick craft with me. Now, I do warn you I'll be using a heat gun, so it may get a bit noisy. I also wanted to talk to you about color choices. I was watching a video just recently, and the person was doing a flip through of a journal that they had created. It was absolutely beautiful, and I'm sorry I can't remember who that person was. I've watched so many videos just recently, and they were talking about the fact that they don't really like red, but they'd used that color in their journal and they quite liked it. And I did giggle to myself because I am that person. I tend to steer away from reds and oranges and sometimes yellows and greens even. I just don't seem to have a connection with those colors, and it's quite interesting because I've had a photography business, and as part of that business I investigated color quite a lot, and I didn't realize that it was actually not the color that I didn't like, but it was the color tone that I didn't like. I've said in my previous videos I have a real affinity to vintage theme and vintage imagery. I also have an affinity to vintage tones. Now, as an example, I'll just move these out of the way. I picked up a piece of fabric the other day and fell in love with it, and ironically it is probably my least favorite color. It's orange. Now, as a kid growing up, I really didn't like orange, but this fabric here with that beautiful burnt orange tone, I love it. And I've grown to realize that it's not necessarily the color that I don't like, but the tone. So I challenge you all out there to investigate color more closely and compare different tones. So you have the really brights and you have the more muted vintage tonal range in colors, and it'll be interesting to see if any of you have any feedback about what you discover. Sometimes, and I found for myself, it really dictated my style. So I'll be interested to see if that helps any of you when discovering your own style and following your own path. I just wanted to share that with you. I hope it helps somebody. Okay, so on the Traveler's Notebook flip through, I mentioned that I had used food colouring to add to my tea staining, and I just thought I would do a quick craft with me. It really is experimental, and I just need you to know that. So I've had a little bit of a play a couple of times now, and just excuse me as I reach across the camera, I'm sorry. So I have some things to show you. I have made my own recycled paper on more than one occasion now, and last time I made it I had a play with colouring it with food colouring, and it was quite successful. This bottom one was an attempt at purple, and I don't know if you can see in the camera, but the red and the blue kind of separated slightly, and the red has kind of come to the surface, but I still love it. I hope you can see that in the video. And on the back it doesn't show at all. So that was really interesting. The blues, different tones depending on what paper and what food colouring I've added. But I love how different and yet the same they all are. So the other thing I've noticed is if you air dry it, which these are, the colour can run a little if it becomes wet. So I have to be careful what glues I use with it. The other thing I did try when I did those was using food colour to dye cheesecloth, and again quite successful. I dried these on the clothesline after I had tea stained them, and again the colour does run when I use particular glues, so I have to be careful what glue I use. And I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to continue using them or whether I should pop them in the oven and see if I can heat set them perhaps, or even iron them and heat set them that way and see if that makes a difference. So again, like I said, it's all experimental. And I'll give you an example. Learn by your mistakes, isn't that what they say? So I made this little embellishment and I'd used a wet glue underneath. It was a quick dry glue, but nevertheless, actually I think it may have been a fabric glue that I used. And I just put a tiny bit underneath, A, to test, and B, just I wanted to hold the fabric in place while I stitched around it, and the food colouring has bled through. So that was when I became aware that there might be a problem and I needed to be careful with that. I still love the look of it. I love the look of the colouring around, so I need to rethink how I use the glue and what I do there, whether I just don't use the glue at all or stitch only. I haven't decided. I'm concerned if I put it in a journal and somebody puts water on it that the colours will run, but then if I have a vintage theme, I'm not really sure that that's such a bad thing. Like I said, a work in progress. So that was my play with food colouring in the recycled paper. And then I also did the tea staining. Now, this was actually my last effort at the tea staining, and I did mention to Paula on the comments that as I'm only relatively new to YouTube, I'm just not sure that I'm ready to combat a whole tea staining episode. It actually takes me about 3 hours to do a batch. I have quite a large oven, but I do tend to do large batches at a time, and my oven is actually playing up at the moment, so I'm in the process of deciding whether I need to replace a part or replace the oven, or some days it just doesn't turn on, so that's a bit of a drama. But I got some beautiful results. Now, I did watch a video on Gayle Agostinelli's channel about tea staining, where she used different things to create different patterns, and I wanted to have a play with that when I did these papers, so I absolutely loved the way they came out. And they add a completely new element to the journals, which I've fallen in love with. So I did all of these. I actually have a lot of the pink are missing because they are still in my paper press. So when I do the tea staining, I tea stain and then I iron between 2 sheets of baking paper, and then I pop them in a paper press that my husband has made for me and flatten them that way. So, but I just love the patterns. And I actually did a lot of tags that day too. I have them over here. If you'll just excuse me, I forgot to get them out. They're just tucked away in a box at the moment. I need to find a better way of storing them. So all different shapes and sizes. They were recycled manila envelopes. Sorry, not envelopes, manila folders that had come from a business that didn't need them anymore. And I have just cut them down to all different shapes and sizes, and I'm able to then embellish them any way I want to use inside the journals, just to give you an idea. And I did all four colours. So there's the purple, the pink, the brown and the green. Okay. So for today's first craft with me, like I said, I'll be using a heat gun. So when I first started playing with food colouring in tea stain, I used small spray bottles. So I believe they're 80 mils. And that gave me a gauge to measure my tea to food colouring ratio, and I used a heat gun to set them. So these are an example. They're not the first ones that I did, but an example of different sheets and different colours. And again, I was aiming for the vintage tone, so purely my aesthetic, and I'm not going to give people the ratios that I use. I would suggest that you have a play with the colour and investigate the colour tones that suit your style and that speak to you, because at the end of the day, that's how you create, and that will be what makes your journal sing the best. So this is a yellow and a reddy pinky tone and a green. And I'm sure by now you're noticing the detail that you can create using the heat gun. And I actually use these sheets. They're only single-sided, but I use these sheets when I create embellishments or decorate pockets and tags and things like that. And I love the added detail that you get from the heat gun on the tea staining. There's a deep purple and a pinky purple, if you can see the different colour tones. And this is all purely by playing with the colour in the food colouring bottles. And a blue. Okay, so I'm just using, now I made this tea this morning and it's now afternoon, so it's been sitting. It's just a Lipton's tea. I've done 2 cups, and literally I do 1 tea bag per cup. So I've got 2 cups of liquid in there with 2 tea bags. And the food colouring that I've been using is the Queen's food colouring, and they have the 3 primary colours plus the green. So I'm going to have a play with the orange now, because we were looking at this beautiful orange fabric. I thought we'd have a little play with that. So I'm just going to open up my spray bottles. And I'm just going to cut. I don't like this part to be touching the bottom, and I cut it at an angle. I hope you can see that. I think that should be okay. So you can see it's just not quite on the bottom. And we'll pop our food colouring. I do have a white piece of paper here. I thought it might be easier. I usually do this on newspaper, but I put the butcher's paper down just so it wasn't quite so distracting. There is newspaper underneath me here, just to protect my work surface and everything that I have on my desk. So it's roughly 3/4, well, 7/8 full. I might tip a little bit out. I don't know if you can see that. It actually is up to about here, where the curvature of the bottle occurs, just to give you a guide. And I don't know what ratios. Now, I did make some quite some time ago, and I had a little play with that this morning, just so that you can see the tone that we get. So I'm not necessarily trying to get exactly the same result, but I thought if we match it up with the fabric, sorry, I've put 2 drops of red in there, so I'm going to put 6 of each. And this is literally how I forgot I was videoing just then when I started tipping them in, sorry. And 6 of the yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm thinking that may not be enough, so we'll set that to the side and we can give it a little test. So just give it a little shake. The other thing I found with these is once they've been sitting for a little bit, you may need to shake them again before you use them. Okay, so I have paper here. And I'm just going to give my paper a spray. Oh, we've already got a beautiful orange tone just from that. Now this will be noisy. You may want to turn your sound down a little bit while we're doing this, and I do apologise. And to get those beautiful raindrop looks, I just sort of tilt the paper while I'm drying it. And if it looks like it's getting too close to the end, I'll turn the paper around. You can see it starts to dry around the outside of the liquid, forming those beautiful patterns. And it does start to get quite thick as it gets quite dry, and it will just stop in the one spot. So just work it until it dries. hope you can see on screen. Like watching paint dry, really, isn't it? Sorry. Okay, so I can see already it is airing on the ready side. So if you weren't happy with that, I'm trying to get something that will work quite well with that fabric, and I actually think that does work quite well. So I may add 1 drop of yellow and just see what that does. And worst case scenario, I can always add another drop of red if I'm not happy with it. But I find the tea tones down those colours and mutes them just to give that vintage feel in the background of the colours rather than the really light, bright colour that you can get from food colouring. And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about the tea stain in the water. Now when I do these sheets of paper, I usually do layers. So the original sheets that I showed you, these ones, they probably have about 3 layers on them to get the layers in the patterns and the colours. So, and quite often when I do it, I will spray the whole sheet for the first run, and then I will patch in the parts that I've missed, and shifting the paper around the whole time so that I get these beautiful run marks and even the puddles. I think they add beautiful detail. So I've just mixed in 1 more drop of the yellow, and we'll do another layer. And when I chose the butcher's paper for the backdrop, I am sort of thinking that I may be able to use that in something. I haven't decided yet. We'll see how that goes. Watch your ears. just keep the heat gun moving the whole time so that you don't burn into the paper. The heat gun does get very, very hot. Watching your fingers aren't directly under the heat gun because you will burn them. So you can see there's a little bit of moisture here still, so I would take the heat gun and I would do that again normally. But you can see we're starting to develop lighter colours around the edges, so as I go I would start to fill in around here where there's a bit more white patchy still showing, and that still develops the colours in the centre. And it's really just getting it to a point where you're happy with it. So, and like I said, this is how I first played with my tea staining colour, just to get a feel of what I wanted, what I liked, what tones I liked. Okay, I'm turning the heat gun on again, so just watch your ears if you've got headphones in. Watching your fingers. Okay, Now I'm noticing as this is layering, I'm getting more and more of a red tone showing through, so I may be inclined to add a bit more yellow just to bring out the more orange tones. I do find I need to shake the bottle before I spray each time just to mix the colours in. They do seem to separate a little in the bottle. I'm not quite sure why that occurs, but I'll show you again with the fabric. And I actually think that that's quite pretty together. And just adds a slightly different element to the tea staining that you don't get in the oven, or I certainly haven't been able to accomplish in the oven. And I would keep building those layers just to deepen the colour and the layers on there to achieve something like this. I probably haven't been quite as liberal spraying it each time either while I'm doing this video, just because of time restraints. So, and obviously it takes a long time to dry each layer if you've got too much build up, so trying to keep that to a minimum so you're not having to listen to the heat gun for too long. But that's just to give you an idea. So I know it's not exactly what you were after, Paula, but that is literally the process I used to discover how I wanted to use the food colouring and tea stain to achieve the colour effect that I wanted. And once I had that worked out, I then took those quantities, I wrote them down as I did each colour for the 80 mils, so that I could work out, if I did a larger quantity, how much of each food colouring I would need. If your food colouring doesn't come in a little dropper bottle like this, I actually have used little eyedroppers, and I did have them here. I don't know where I've put them. Just an eyedropper that you get from the pharmacy or the craft supply shop. Here we go. And I just use that to count the number of drops that I put into my little 80 ml bottles. And that way when I go to recreate that colour next time I can. And just keep that noted somewhere so that you can refer back to it when you need it. Now I have actually tried keeping these in spray bottles, and I'm not completely convinced that they have a long shelf life, so I actually do need to empty out the spray bottles that I have and wash them out properly, and probably just make it up as I need to use it, which again is why you need to keep a record of what you have used to create the colour tones that you're after. So I think that was all I wanted to share with you for today. I hope that helps in some way, but like I said, go out there and investigate colour tones, because it was a big game changer for me, thinking that I didn't like a particular colour to realising it had nothing to do with the colour but the tones in the colour that weren't pleasing to my eye. So again, thank you so much for your support and for your subscriptions, and I hope to see you again next time. Big hugs, Gayle. Thank you so much again for the shout out. I truly, truly appreciate it. Bye everyone. Take care. See you soon.